Okay, so we're back for part two. So we just left off on 22, which was The Angels Take Manhattan by Stephen Moffat. We discussed that. See part one for my bottom three, the three worst, and then everything in between. And then also my lengthy diatribes about individual episodes, including select comments for um, um, Angels Take Manhattan. So, if you want to see that, just click over there. Or I'm trying to remember which side the bar is on. So, one or the other. Okay, so at 21, the 21st best episode is A Christmas Carol by Stephen Moffat. It is a good Moffat episode. It's clever, it's surprising, it's playful. Um, it plays the ideas and the characters off well. It's a good piece for Christmas. It was the sort of thing you would watch on Christmas. Whereas a lot of his other Christmas episodes, all of his other Christmas episodes were kind of not quite right, in my opinion. This is his best Christmas episode, hands down. What I will say about it is that it would be higher on my list if the solution to the episode wasn't largely involved into listening a sort of cheesy, beautiful song bit. I thought that was a lot more interesting in Rings of the Cotton. I thought that in this one it kind of come off ludicrous. And then also some lines like when a spaceship is crashing, the captain saying Christmas is canceled. Also, some of the bad guy business was kind of cheesy. So it could have been a little bit more restrained in those areas. It was very steampunk, though, which is something that Stephen Moffat doesn't do, really. And so that was kind of interesting, just to see Stephen Moffat kind of do a steampunk episode. I feel like if Neil Gaiman became showrunner, which I think he probably won't, sadly, although I think the entire world would love for Neil Gaiman to become showrunner, he would do a lot more of that sort of business, and I'm sure we'd all love that. At the 20 spot comes The God Complex by Toby Whithouse. And this is a genuinely frightening, genuinely surprising, genuinely bizarre episode. A great supporting cast, great ideas. And it handles the morality of the Doctor in a way that very few episodes are willing to do. It takes on the Doctor's dark side, and it is worth being in the top 20. All right, 19. A Town Called Mercy, also by Toby Whithouse. Some people don't like this episode. I understand. It's full of bad Western stereotypes. It's intentionally full of every cheap country Western movie, John Wayne, gunslinger kind of bit. The bad guy's even called the Gunslinger, as if, there's just one in a town where everyone's gun happy, as a sort of obnoxious, simplistic portrayal of American culture. But what makes it interesting is, in spite of having all these tropes of Westerns, the story is actually very non-Western. It's a sort of Nuremberg trial story. It's about war criminals, and there's this wonderful business between the Doctor and the monstrous guy, who are both, in a certain way, war criminals, and how the Doctor can believe himself to be sort of a morally upright savior of sorts, as he likes to think of himself, sort of a genie in a bottle to fix problems, but at the same time be someone who committed genocide. And so in a way, the Doctor is himself more of the sort of the runaway Nazi than the Doctor. The alien Doctor. Well, the terms get confusing, but if you see the episode, it makes more sense. But yeah, that whole sort of the idea of a aged Nazi war criminal living in South America or something like that, and then someone wanting to come to bring them to justice after they've changed their lives and become better people out of guilt. And whether you can choose your own punishment, whether that's justice. I think this is an episode that Socrates and Plato would have loved watching because it brings up those great ideas that you can do in Doctor Who. So, setting aside some cheesier bits aside, this is an episode which deals with big ideas in a way that only Doctor Who does and can. And so I put it at 19 for that reason. At 18, another controversial choice is Victory of the Daleks by Mark Gatiss. A lot of people hate this episode because the supposed Power Ranger Daleks. Apparently, because the Daleks are brightly colored and a little bit too large, therefore the entire episode must be terrible. There's also a couple criticisms I would agree with, about saying that the resolution to the Bomb Man issue was a little bit disappointing because it doesn't make any sense with any kind of science at all. But so what? This is another episode in the Mark Gatiss vein, one that I support Mark Gatiss for, of being a smaller, contained, more classic Who style episode. It's a little campier, it's a little bit more ridiculous. And that's where Mark Gatiss knows how to do stuff in a smaller sense. And how can you argue with Daleks wandering around a building with Churchill carrying trays of tea, saying, "I am your soldier," or any number of strange things? It's gleefully delightful. And Churchill's fun. It's what it should be. And people that criticize it are wanting everything to be something slick in a modern way, and they don't want it to be rebalanced out by a certain healthy amount of campiness, which is part of what Doctor Who is. So I defend that episode. I actually quite like it. At 17 is Amy's Choice by Simon Nye. Now, if the rest of these episodes weren't so good, I would have to put this one higher, because this one is wonderful. This is a wonderful episode. It's genuinely surprising. The acting is amazing. It's another one which is nice and restrained. It doesn't wander through big special effects of all of space and time. It's set in a little English village and inside the TARDIS console room. It's full of good ideas and good science fiction and great solutions which really make sense instead of just kind of throwing them about. It's a fun one, and it's a clever one, and it's emotional. And it develops characters in a way they hadn't been developed up to that point. I think that's really the first episode where you understand who Amy and Rory are and who they're going to be for the rest of the series. And I loved this episode. I watched it just the other day again because I like it so much. So at 17, we have Amy's Choice. At 16, we have another controversial one, Asylum of the Daleks. I think that this is a really stellar episode. I think it's the best. I think it's the best thing that Stephen Moffat has done with Daleks since he became the showrunner. I think Daleks have been rightfully, well-meaningly so, underrepresented in Stephen Moffat's time as the Doctor showrunner. Rusty Davies ran the Daleks into the ground and made you say, "Okay, no more Daleks. Just can we please have a season ending or mid-ending or something that doesn't involve Daleks trying to take over the world and then somehow all dying, you know?" And no Davros, because I don't like Davros. I just don't. I'm sorry. But so, yes. Asylum of the Daleks, wonderfully well-paced, great science fiction stuff, really scary, really original, wonderful, wonderful twist ending with Oswin. Oh my gosh. Now, some people don't like that it makes a major change to the Dalek mythology in Doctor Who. It makes a couple small changes and then one big one. But to be fair, that change has been unofficially made dozens of times, where somehow the Doctor's relationship with the Daleks is different from episode to episode and usually not explained. And so all Stephen Moffat has done is freed up himself and future writers to write a wide variety of different types of Dalek stories, giving us a wider color palette of ways to look at a Dalek story. And so people that are complaining about that, just they need to move on, because okay, so the Daleks for a little while maybe don't remember him, but based upon the way he wrote it, they could remember him next time if it was important, or if it helped future writers, they could not remember him, and that's up to future writers, and it gives them more options. Yeah, maybe he couldn't, maybe shouldn't have done it, but it doesn't ruin an otherwise amazing episode. Okay, at number 15 comes, I think, a highly undervalued episode, which is Hyde by Neil Cross. I love this episode. I think this is a stunning episode. It's one of the few ghost stories I've seen since I was over the age of 5 that I thought was any good at all. It's really well paced. It's genuinely frightening. You start to see some character development with Clara. You start to see the changes that has happened to the Doctor, having lost Amy and Rory, how he's a different Doctor. It's almost like he regenerated at the loss of Amy and Rory, because Matt Smith's performance changes a lot. And the ending is great. There's some surprises, some really great effects and filming, tonally. Oh, it's great. It gave me faith in Series 7B that the show was going to continue to be good, because there's some real stinkers in Series 7B, and they don't get you attached to Clara nearly fast enough to keep you going without a couple of gems like this one. So, yes, Hyde by Neil Cross. I'm so excited that Neil Cross is coming back for Series 8, because I think he's got more to do that I'm really excited to see. Okay. At 14 comes the 11th Hour. Now, some people are going to be really mad that the 11th Hour is not the number 1 spot, because every single list I've ever seen of Matt Smith episodes always puts 11th Hour as his best episode. 14. Out of 44, that's not bad. It's a great episode. It's a really good episode. It's an amazing episode. And on that episode builds a lot of the even better episodes because of the heavy lifting done by the 11th Hour. The regeneration, meeting little Amy, or little Amelia, meeting the fish fingers and custard scene. The I'm the Doctor, so basically run bit. It sets up the return of Doctor Who after David Tennant and makes sure that the show has legs to walk going forward. The reason it's not at the top of my list is because it's a very, very done before plot. Big old bad monster is going to blow up the world for a very pitiful reason. They're big floating eyeballs on snowflakes in the sky. And the solution is just that the Doctor's scary, and so you shouldn't mess with me, even though I don't use weapons of any kind and I've never been known to hurt someone. They always hurt themselves. That's why it's not higher on my list, because emotionally and character story, it's driven. But science fiction and plot-wise, it's okay. You know, it's middle of the road story with great details. So introducing a new companion, introducing a new Doctor, being funny and clever and scary and charming and everything that it should be. It's a great episode, but I'm not going to be sanctimonious about it just because I love it so much. At 13, A Good Man Goes to War by Stephen Moffat. Some people hate this episode. I love this episode. You see a dark side of the Doctor in this one. You see desperate and fear and anger, and you get to see really brilliant stuff with Amy and Rory. They develop both of them. They show how both of them are very strong, but they're strong in such different ways. But you also get to see a real vulnerability to both Amy and Rory in that episode, which you don't get to see necessarily in all the other ones. You get Ginny and Strax and Vastra. This is their first appearance. You get the Headless Monks, which as far as throwaway villains go, one of my favorite throwaway villains ever. They appear basically in just that one episode, but they're totally awesome. You get the great inclusion of other stuff with the Bishop's army, including that wonderful line between the short fat one and the tall thin one. Love that bit. Just a lot of great stuff in that episode. And also, they pull the rug on you so many times. And it is what makes Stephen Moffat a good writer, because it shows his ability to just, when he gets really excited, he just sort of explodes with dozens of ideas and just grabs them from all over the place. And he puts those into his work, and it's what makes him fun, and what makes him unique to other writers is that he can throw that many balls up in the air and keep juggling them if he does enough planning ahead of time. And the groundwork was laid for that with that two-parter with the Flesh, which was we've already discussed that one in part 1, but a great two-parter, couple quibbles, but still very good. Okay, at number 12 we have The Impossible Astronaut, and at number 11 we have Day of the Moon. These are ranked sort of arbitrarily. I don't think one or the other is better than the other, so it's a two-parter. They go together. They're genius together. It's a great two-parter. It's a great series opener because it lets you know that season 6 is going to be like this. Fasten your seatbelts because it's going to be so fast-paced. It's going to have a lot of stuff, and you're expected to remember all of it, so keep up. Very thrilling, very exciting. The silents are wonderful. The silents have never been as good since. That two-part episode makes the silents just one of the classic Doctor Who villains, even though apparently they can't return the same quality because every time they return afterwards, they're less frightening. But oh man, that two-part, they're just great. Amy and Rory are really good. They really have a lot to do. It's really the first time that you start to see the Doctor's role with River Song as different from River Song's role with the Doctor. You start to see how he feels about River Song and that growing relationship between the two of them. There's so much I can say about the two-part episode. It's one of my favorites. I think it's evidence that, in spite of people's nasty, bad talking about Stephen Moffat, I think that is absolutely wonderful. And I hope that Season 8 has something like that in it. Series 8. I'm sorry, snobs. Okay. At 10, we have The Time of Angels. And at 9, we have Flesh and Stone. Another brilliant two-parter. I think the best thing that Stephen Moffat's ever done with Weeping Angels. Blink is a genius episode and fully deserving of all its praise. But this two-part episode establishes for me the definitive Angel story. It's truly terrifying. It has a true mythology to it. It has its own rules, which it's very strict with, and it plays into the art really well. We'll get to that in a second. But I particularly like how it transfers from part 1 to part 2, because part 1 is very contained, the same basic environment, the same basic story, brilliant stuff there. But then the last minute, you start to see how part 2 is really going to throw you for a loop. So, love it. I love it. I think as far as a perfect Doctor Who goes, this is about it. It's shocking to think that 10 and 9 are what I'm considering to be a perfect episode, because we have episodes above that. But as far as Stephen Moffat's writing goes, and as far as the right sort of story for a Doctor Who episode, this is it, right here. It spreads across 2 parts perfectly, and all those frustrating 1-part episodes or 2-part episodes that either didn't work or whatever, you need to look back to this episode to see how a 2-part episode should be done. The second part opens the scope of it, has these terribly clever ideas, these wonderful surprises. It's a stunning episode. All right. Now, at 8, we have The Girl Who Waited by Tom McRae. This is New Who at its best. This shows the differences of what makes New Who such a special thing. Classic Who and New Doctor Who they really are the same. People want to make a big difference between the two of them. They're not that different. The differences are not this ocean. Doctor Who has always changed. If you look at early Doctor Who to Tom Baker Doctor Who, any era of Doctor Who is very different from the time before it, and it will always be changing. And just because New Who is in 45 minutes, well, so are some of the Colin Baker episodes. That being said, no one's ever acknowledged intentionally copying something done in Colin Baker's time period for good reason. But anyways, this episode is, I think, the best episode for the 11th Doctor's characterization. This is the episode where you understand who the Doctor is in the clearest of terms. and you see his power, his humanity, his goodness, his badness. This is one of those episodes where River Song is dead right. The first rule about the Doctor is the Doctor lies, and then what really makes this a great episode is Karen Gillan's performance as both versions of Amy. It's a Emmy, Oscar, BAFTA, whatever winning performance it should be. It's amazing, and some of the best makeup ever done on any show, because it's totally believable, and it's heartbreaking, and it's thoughtful, and Rory does something. He's not just the sidekick in this one, and it's just an all-star episode, and it deals with big issues in a real way, and I love it. So at number 8, we have The Girl Who Waited by Tom McRae. A real stunner. At number 7, another controversial choice, and I'm going to acknowledge all the criticisms that people have here. At number 7, I have The Bells of St. John by Stephen Moffat. Some people hate this episode. I've heard some people say that this episode is worse than Star Wars Episode 2. That's saying a lot. I mean, that's a really, really rough critique. I like it. It is one of those episodes where Stephen Moffat's not as concerned about science fiction. He's a lot more concerned about character. But what I like about it is he takes all the right moves to get us attached to Clara, show us that the show is still worth watching, show how the show is different, and keep us involved. Those lovely scenes with the Doctor, sitting outside, and in the bit where he puts the cookies together, and it's stunning, it's surprising, it's clever. The airplane bit, I love. The motorbike bit, I love it. I really like the purple jacket. I wish they had left the waistcoats out of it, because just, the purple jacket with the regular costume was a really great look, and I think if they had kept that, I would have loved that. But where the show suffers is from the fact that they have a great idea, the idea of something being in the Wi-Fi, something sinister. It's really scary, it's really interesting, it's really modern, which fits with the feel of the episode. Shot from the outside of the TARDIS and the inside of the TARDIS is great. But what hurts in the episode is taking the time to develop. It's just not enough time in 45 minutes to get through all that Wi-Fi science business, and it ends up just feeling like a minute solution to a problem. Whether that should make it go lower on my list or not, I don't really know. But for me, at least, it kept me going on Doctor Who after losing the Pawns, which, quite honestly, was almost more of a motivation to stop watching than losing any particular Doctor, because they did such special things with those characters, and you got so attached to them, and it just felt like, what am I still watching for? About the Doctor. It will always be about the Doctor, and that you're not... Okay, so at number 6, I have, I think, a rather uncontroversial choice, The Name of the Doctor. This is, in my opinion, a big part of celebrating the 50th anniversary. Without this episode, I don't think the 50th anniversary would have been as good. This episode sets up a retrospect about Doctor Who in a way that's just plain genius. It deals with the personal struggles of the Doctor in a way that very few episodes do. This is one of those few episodes that deals with the Doctor's personal struggle. Usually it's someone else's struggle, the Doctor's being nice and popping in to help them out. This is one about him. And Matt Smith gives a stunning performance, probably his best performance in all of Doctor Who, which is saying quite a lot, because he's an amazing actor who's done amazing things with the show. But what he does in this episode just hits you so hard in the chest, it's hard to breathe. It's emotional in such an amazing way. Murray Gold's score is amazing. The setting is great, because it's something we haven't seen in Doctor Who before, and it's at the same time feels very familiar. It's very surprising. It's brilliant. The great intelligence is finally used in a way that works. And then, of course, the big plot twist at the end talk about a real surprise. Not one of those plot twists where they threw one in because they knew that we were expecting a plot twist. They just gave us one. This is a real game-changing plot twist. This is one that does fit in with all of the 50-year history of Doctor Who, but still surprises and still moves us forward into something we haven't seen before in a real way. Okay, so at number 5, the 5th best 11th Doctor episode of all time is The Doctor's Wife by Neil Gaiman. And this seems terribly predictable because everyone has it within the top 5 list of best 11th Doctor episodes, but for good reason. Neil Gaiman writes a real modern classic here. This is the kind of episode, well, it's the perfect piece of standalone, because it's not standalone in that it's just a random book, sort of page marker along a larger story. It's a standalone story in the fact that it works on its own, and it doesn't need, you can watch this one. You can give this one to someone who's watched any other era of Doctor Who, and just hand it to them, they can watch it, and it fits with Doctor Who, and it's genius. It's very, very wonderfully emotional. It deals with the history, it deals with the future. It's scary, it's surprising, it's funny. And it handles things in a way that I think is really shocking. And this is the episode which just demonstrates how good Neil Gaiman is and how much we need him to write more episodes for Doctor Who, because this is a real amazing episode. And you genuinely wish that that the Doctor, that the TARDIS would be a human person to be a companion with the Doctor. If there was a way to get both, I think we'd all love to see that. But it wouldn't make any sense. And it's a great ending. It's a great ending. I love that episode. At the number 4 spot, I have The Day of the Doctor. I know a lot of people are probably upset that it's not at the number 1 spot, because some people think that this is the best thing Stephen Moffat's ever done. I've heard some people say this is the only good thing Stephen Moffat's ever done. The Day of the Doctor is an excellent episode. Much like Name of the Doctor, it knows how to engage with the history of Doctor Who in a very intimate way. It's consistent with all the history. It's well paced. It gives fair time to David Tennant's Doctor, the War Doctor, Matt Smith. It addresses all the different stuff. It doesn't cheat. The pieces fit together. It works on many levels with the whole history of Doctor Who, while at the same time moving the show forward for the next 50 years of the show. And my computer's doing a thing. Oh, there we go. Okay. But it is everything's right with it. It's much funnier than you expect. One of the nice things about the episode is that although it deals with some of the heaviest material in the Doctor Who canon, it's actually a very lighthearted episode in the way that it knows not to take itself too seriously, in spite of the fact that it's a very serious storyline. So, Day of the Doctor, well worth the hype. I put it at number 4. At number 3, we have The Pandorica Opens by Stephen Moffat. Great episode. Great episode. Wonderfully paced. Everything that is Moffat. Brilliant. Brings it to a big cliffhanger. And then, for the number 2 spot, we have The Big Bang, which gives resolution to The Pandorica Opens. An absolutely amazing episode. Stephen Moffat said several times it's one of the ones that he's written that he's most proud of. And although he's a smug, angry Scotsman, he's right. It's a great episode. It's one of the best things he's ever written. The pieces fit together. The surprises fit together. It's clever. It's smart. It's very Doctor Who. It's all about time and space and that stuff in a way that Russell T Davies never really did. Stuff that some people are now sick of, but I think that they should get over it because it's clever. It's good. It's good writing. It's very emotional. And then you get that wonderful bit. I promised to talk about this later, where you understand that the change of Matt Smith's behavior from the Angel story, Flesh and Stone, is due to him going back and fixing things, and that's where the Doctor. You're seeing the character of the Doctor in that he likes time traveling because he can go back and fix things, and so he goes back and fixes things in Amy's personal timeline. And then the solution is great to it. It's just plain television magic, and it's modern Doctor Who at its best. Difficult, challenging, timey-wimey, whatever. It's great. And people that don't like it need to get on board with the show that they're really watching. They're watching a show about an old time traveler. And that's what it is. I love that episode. At the number 1 spot, it was always going to be this episode. There was never a doubt in my mind. Vincent and the Doctor by Richard Curtis. For all the Moffat praising I do, the best episode starring Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor is Vincent and the Doctor. It's an episode that only Doctor Who could have. It's about space and time, it's about history, it's about emotion, it's about story. It's very well handled, it's very surprising, and it's exactly what Doctor Who can and should be. So that's my list. If you don't like that list, there's another list about Hypable on Hypable.com, which has a very different outcome than mine. I like that list. I like mine better, but they're both great. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Bye.